The wind moved across the red plains of Elara 7. Dust lifted into the air and danced through the empty streets of the alien village. Small hands clutched worn-out pieces of chalk. On the cracked walls of huts, on the ground near temples, even inside cave shelters, there were drawings. Hundreds of them. All showed the same figure, a tall being in strange armor, a human. The alien children didn't know his name, but they had heard the stories passed down from their elders. They called him the one who comes when all is lost. It began 200 years ago. After the first contact between humans and the native Elari people, there had been peace for a time. Trade had grown, humans shared tools. The Elari shared their song crystals and healing waters, but peace doesn't always last. Other species saw the alliance and felt threatened. They whispered lies, sowed doubt. A war followed, not between the humans and Elari, but between the Elari and a powerful war clan called the Zarneth. The humans left. Some said they were pushed away. Others believed they went silent to protect their own people. But one tale remained. That one day when the fire returned and the children drew the figure again, he would come. Now, the fire had returned. Bright flashes lit the sky. Zarneth airships roared overhead, dropping burning pods. Screams echoed through the canyon walls. The elders tried to fight, but their shields cracked like dry bark. Homes made from crystal and sun-baked stone fell. The enemy gave no mercy. They didn't want to rule. They wanted to erase. Among the fleeing families was a girl named Elara. Young, barely 16 by human count, but old enough to see what the Zarneth left behind. Her baby brother's cries mixed with the rumble of falling rocks. She had grown up drawing the figure like the others. Her walls were covered in chalk humans with glowing hands and star-shaped eyes. Her grandmother once told her, "We don't draw him for fun. We draw to remember. And when the last fire rises, he will step through it." As Elara ran with her mother, her hands still clutched the chalk. The basket of scrolls she carried fell into the dust. She didn't stop. They reached the cliff edge and joined others hiding among the caves. Below them, the village burned. Far above, in orbit, a silent ship came to life. Its systems had slept for a long time. Hidden under a moon's crust, powered by ancient solar tech, it had listened. And when enough fires lit the skies of Elara 7, it triggered a signal. In a quiet chamber inside that ship, something stood. A black armored figure, arms crossed, helmet resting on a stone pedestal. Lights flickered around him. Data ran across the walls. He opened his eyes. No one in the cave knew what was coming. The elders whispered prayers. The children cried. Elara sat still, drawing once again in the dust. She didn't speak. She only made one more sketch, her lines trembling. A tall man, a glowing chest plate. A hand raised, not in war, but in warning. Others looked at her drawing. Some smiled faintly. Others wept. In that moment, above the burning world, a human woke. He wasn't a god. He wasn't a savior. He was a soldier who had made a promise. And now, after 200 years, he was finally keeping it. The cave shook with every blast from above. Parents held their children close, trying to keep them quiet. Outside, the sky glowed orange as enemy fires spread across the valley. Smoke crawled into the shelter through cracks in the stone. Some of the elders whispered old war chants, but their voices were thin and shaking. The people had no weapons, no army, and no allies. Only stories. Elara sat near the edge of the cave, her back pressed to the rock, her drawing still fresh in the dirt. Her fingers moved without thinking, sketching again the shape of the human. She had drawn him so many times that her hands remembered every curve, every detail, even when her mind was full of fear. Suddenly, the air outside changed. It became still, heavy and silent. The wind stopped. The screams faded. A strange vibration moved through the ground like a deep breath before something massive arrived. Then, from beyond the cliffs, a beam of light cut through the smoke. It wasn't fire. It wasn't a weapon. It was a landing. The beam faded and something stepped out of the fog. He was tall, shaped like the drawings. Dark armor covered his body, marked with scratches from old battles. His helmet had a single white light at the center, glowing like an eye. His steps were slow and calm. His arms didn't hold a weapon. His hands were open, empty, and strong. A Zarnath patrol turned toward him. The armored man raised one hand, palm facing outward. The patrol didn't speak. They charged. The first Zarnath warrior swung a burning blade, but it never touched him. With one move, the human sidestepped, grabbed the attacker by the arm, and slammed him into the ground so hard the dust exploded. The others paused. Their second charge was slower. The human didn't need a gun. He used their own weight against them. He moved like water but struck like thunder. When he was finished, 5 enemies lay silent and the rest ran. From the cave, the Elara people saw it all. Some gasped. Others fell to their knees. "He looks like the drawings," one child said softly. Elia stared, frozen. "He came." The man didn't look toward the cave. Not yet. He looked at the burning homes, then at the horizon where more Zarnath airships were gathering. He touched the side of his helmet. A faint voice spoke inside, filtered through old static. Signal found. Primary directive restored. He spoke only one word. "Elara." Then he walked forward into the fire. Inside the cave, one of the elder women rose to her feet. Her voice was hoarse but full of strength. "The old stories were true," she said. "He is not a god, he is not our master, he is a man who once walked among us, a soldier, a protector." Another elder added, "He made a promise. He said if our children remembered him, he would come again." Elia's mother turned to her daughter and touched her hand. "You remembered." Elia didn't speak. She stood slowly, her legs shaking. The children moved toward the cave entrance, their fear replaced by wonder. The sky was still full of smoke, but in the center of it stood one figure. The man who had been drawn for 200 years. He didn't wave. He didn't speak to them. Yet, he only walked forward, each step sending a silent message. "You are not forgotten." The human moved through the smoke like a shadow of old war. His armor hissed and adjusted with each step, scanning the land, detecting heat, sound, and motion. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He had seen worse than this. But he had never seen drawings of himself in red dirt by alien children. His name was Cade. Or it had been long ago when he first stepped onto Elara 7 during the early Alliance mission. He had trained with the Elara warriors, ate their strange fruits, listened to their music under crystal trees. Then the war came and he was called away. The Zarnath attacked when the humans left. And so, to keep a promise, Cade placed his mind and body into stasis inside an orbital vessel. His last words were recorded into the ship's core. "If they burn again, wake me." Now he was awake. Ahead of him stood a broken Elara outpost. Its walls had fallen. A signal tower lay in pieces, crushed by impact. A few injured Elara men were crawling, trying to lift a youngling from under rubble. The rest had already perished. Cade walked over, silent and steady. One of the men looked up in fear, mistaking him for an enemy. But Cade knelt beside them and lifted the rubble like it was nothing. He gently pulled the child out. The boy was breathing. Cade opened a compartment on his suit, pulled out a small oxygen patch, and placed it over the child's mouth. The glow turned green. Life was stable. The Elara man stared at him, confused. You are the one from the drawings." Cade didn't respond. He stood and faced the direction of the Zarnath forward base. His HUD showed troop movements, energy clusters, patrol paths. He tapped his forearm and brought up an old map. It was outdated, but his memory filled the gaps. He didn't need armies. He didn't need orders. He needed only one thing: time. Inside, the mountain cave, the Elara people gathered near the entrance. Children climbed onto higher rocks to see the human. Some of them held pieces of chalk, afraid to let go. One child pointed at the air and shouted, "Look!" A streak of blue fire shot into the sky from a distant mountain. A warning flare. Zarnath. Signal. They had spotted him. Alaya's heart jumped. "They're calling reinforcements," she said. Her mother pulled her close. "We should stay hidden." But Elara stepped forward. "If he came to protect us, then he shouldn't stand alone." An elder looked at her with tired eyes. "We are not warriors." "No," she said, "but we are not helpless either." Cade saw the flare too. He knew what it meant. Drones, tracking units. He had 1 hour at most before the sky turned red. Again, he activated a beacon. It wasn't a call for help. It was a battlefield lockdown code. Any old Allied weapon, drone, or system hidden on the planet would activate and try to reach him. Most of them were likely gone, buried, broken. But Elara was full of memory. Deep in the sands, under collapsed ruins, forgotten machines began to hum. Lights flickered, metal limbs twitched. One by one, old human tech hidden long ago came back online. A single line blinked on Cade's helmet screen. Allies, reactivating. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't the only one waking up. A low hum rolled, beneath the ground like a pulse. The sand trembled near the ruins of the old outposts where human soldiers once stood shoulder to shoulder with the Elara. Forgotten tech buried under 2 centuries of wind and dust now flickered to life. Their cores had waited silently, coded, with a single rule: if the human beacon lit again, they would rise. One by one, small defense drones, armored walker limbs, and sensor arrays began to twitch. Their damaged systems blinked, scanning for the last signature they knew. Cade's ID lit up on their interfaces like an old friend's voice calling them from a deep sleep. Cade's armor confirmed activation. 6 scout drones online. 2 ground, turrets initializing, 1 aerial surveyor rising. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. But inside, he felt the weight of memory. He moved quickly toward the edge of the valley. The old battlefield lay ahead, a wide, flat land once used for training. It was mostly forgotten now, buried under dry roots and bones of a lost time. But Cade remembered every step of it. He placed his hand on a broken pylon. The panel lit up. A faint shimmer of a shield generator activated, flickering once, then stabilizing. A soft dome formed in a wide circle around the flatland. It wouldn't last forever, but it would hold for a short battle. He was preparing a trap. Back in the cave, Elara couldn't stay still. She looked toward the horizon where the blue flare had vanished. The wind carried the scent of burned stone and smoke. Her hands were stained with red dust from her drawings, but she gripped them tight. "I have to go," she said. Her mother turned sharply. "No, we stay here, it's safer." "But he's out there," Elara said. "He came because of us, because of what we remembered. I don't want him to think we only drew him. I want him to know we believe in him." One of the elder men stepped closer. "If the soldier wins, he won't need help. If he loses, none of us will survive anyway." Elara nodded slowly. Then, without a word, she picked up her chalk and tied it to her belt with a string. A few of the younger children followed her silently. Together, they walked toward the light. Meanwhile, the Zarneth war units began to gather at the mountain ridge. They had seen the humans' arrival. Their commanders dismissed him as an old threat. They believed he was a myth, until their first patrol didn't return. Now they sent machines of their own. Tall walkers with thin legs and glowing red eyes. Fast scouts with spike-tipped claws. Over a dozen units moved in formation toward the valley. Cade stood at the center of the field, alone. His drones hovered beside him, each scanning targets and broadcasting battle paths. He turned slowly, letting the enemy see him clearly. He wanted them to charge, and they did. Red lights flooded the valley as the Zarneth units poured in like a wave of steel and fire. Their weapons glowed, their movements sharp and deadly. They didn't speak, they didn't hesitate. But neither did Cade. He moved like a storm, flowing through enemy lines with smooth, perfect motion. His armor took hits but kept him moving. His drones flew overhead, marking targets, stunning weapons, disrupting signals. Suddenly, a group of Zarneth scouts broke from the fight and turned toward the caves. They had spotted movement. Children. Elara children. Cade's sensors flared red. He looked toward the cave path and saw them. Small figures, walking slowly through the rising dust, holding nothing but chalk and wide eyes. They weren't running. They were walking toward him. The Zarnath scouts moved faster, and Cade moved faster still. Cade's boots slammed into the dirt as he dashed toward the incoming threat. Dust kicked up behind him, caught in the heat of his armor's thrusters. His HUD marked the scouts, 6 Zarnath units moving at full speed, closing in on the children. From the side path. Too close, too fast, but not fast enough. The Elara children didn't cry. They didn't scream. Aaliyah led them, her hands shaking but her eyes clear. They walked across the old battlefield past half-buried relics and bones. Some of them still held pieces of chalk, tied to belts or clutched in their palms. They came not to fight, but to show him he wasn't just a story, he was real. Cade activated his external speaker. His voice came out like thunder across the valley. "Get behind me." Aaliyah and the others dropped low, huddling together in the shallow ridge. The scouts surged over the crest, spike-limbed machines with glowing red cores and bone-white claws. They aimed for the children. Cade didn't slow down. His shoulder slammed into the first scout like a missile, sending it tumbling. The second lashed out with a claw, but he ducked and drove his armored fist through its sensor. Sparks flew. The third scout leapt onto his back, screeching, but Cade reached behind, grabbed it by the arm, and flung it into a boulder. 2 left. He stepped forward, shielding the children completely now. His armor scratched and smoking. One of the scouts hissed in Zarnath code and fired a plasma bolt. Cade caught it on his shoulder. The armor dimmed, then rebooted. He didn't move. He raised his hand and fired one blast from his wrist launcher. It was not meant to kill, but to disable. The scout collapsed. The last one froze. Cade stepped toward it slowly, his voice steady. "You had one chance." The scout turned to run, but a drone swooped from above and fired a stun beam, dropping it to the dust. Silence returned. The children looked up. Aaliyah's eyes were wide. She had seen war. She had seen fire. But she had never seen someone move like that. Not in real life. Only in the stories. Only in the drawings. Cade turned his head toward her, and though his helmet hid his face, his voice was clear. "You walked across a battlefield, with chalk in your hands." She nodded. "You came because we remembered," he paused. "No, I came because you believed." Behind them, the rest of the Elara in the cave were moving now. Parents ran to gather the children. Elders walked out slowly, their staffs clicking against the stone. More and more people gathered behind Cade, watching the horizon. The Zarnath weren't finished. Cade looked up. His HUD flashed. New contacts. More enemy dropships were coming. Bigger units. He had bought time, not victory. But something changed. A new signal appeared. Unit, Titan-class Siege Walker. Status, partial reboot. Location, 3.2 kilometer underground. Activation code, accepted pilot. Recognized Cade's breath caught in his throat. It was buried beneath the ridge. An old Titan. A weapon of last resort. 1. He had fought in during the First War. He had hidden it there after the last battle, sealing it away when the Alliance fell apart, and now it was calling him home. He turned to Aaliyah. "Stay here. Keep them safe." She stepped forward. "But we want to help." "You already did." Without another word, Cade sprinted toward the ridge. Dust swirled behind him. The earth began to shake. Deep underground, metal began to move. Gears turned. Blue lights flickered in the dark. The Titan was waking up, and this time, it would fight. For more than just survival, it would fight for memory. The ground rumbled with a deep, ancient force. Dust rose from cracks that hadn't opened in centuries. Underneath the red cliffs where the old battlefields ended, a hatch slowly unsealed, stone sliding back over metal. Steam burst upward as cold air escaped from the deep vault. Cade stood at the edge of the opening. His armor synced with the ancient core. Data streamed across his visor. Old systems, forgotten codes, power levels rebuilding slowly. The Titan's name appeared on the screen. Unit designation, Gideon status, stasis complete. Pilot, Cade Lauren memory. Sync, 87%. He dropped into the darkness, without fear. Lights flickered on as he fell through the long chamber. Beneath him stood a massive machine, curled like a sleeping beast. It was almost 10 meters tall, covered in thick black armor, and marked with symbols of the first human Elara alliance. Its eyes were dark. Its fists were clenched. As Cade stepped onto the central platform, the Titan opened. Metal plates pulled back. A small cockpit revealed itself near the chest of the machine. Dust floated in the air like mist as Cade entered and sat down. His armor synced instantly with the machine's systems. His heartbeat matched the pulse of the Titan. "Wake up," he said softly. The lights turned blue. Above the valley, the Zarneth ships were coming. Bigger, faster, louder. There, carriers descended filled with infantry and war machines. They had spotted the human. This time they wouldn't underestimate him. Back in the valley, the Elara people stood at the edge of the battlefield. Elara gripped her mother's hand as they watched the sky darken. One of the elders whispered, "He is gone." "No," Elara said. "He's not gone. He's going deeper." Her words were true. The Titan systems fully activated now. Massive gears turned. Hydraulic joints hissed with power. The ground above cracked as the surface plates split apart. And then, the Titan stood. Dust exploded from the ridge. Birds scattered into the smoky sky. A towering shadow rose from the earth. The children screamed. The elders fell to their knees. But the figure that emerged did not bring fear. It brought how the Titan stepped forward, its feet slamming into the rock with thunder. Its blue eyes burned through the haze like stars. Each movement was slow, heavy, full of purpose. Inside, Cade's voice echoed through external speakers. "Shield the eye. Caves, stand behind the ridge. You will not be harmed." Elara watched, eyes wide, as the drawings she'd made all her life stood before her. Alive, real, walking again. Cade activated targeting. His HUD lit up with dozens of enemy signals. Zarneth warships descended. Their commanders barked orders. The valley was surrounded, but they had waited too long. The Titan raised one arm. Its gauntlet glowed. A charged pulse burst from its arm and hit the ground with a shockwave, knocking over the first line of enemy walkers. Zarneth troops opened fire, but the shots bounced off the Titan's chest like sparks. Inside, Cade's expression was calm. This wasn't just a weapon. It was history moving again. He had trained in this machine. He had once saved Elara leaders with it, and now it answered the same call, because children remembered, because their hands never stopped drawing, because, even after 200 years, they believed. And belief was enough to wake a legend. The valley echoed with fire. Zarneth war machines opened their assault in full force. Red plasma beams cut through the sky, and sonic detonators shook the mountain edges. But in the center of it all stood the Titan, tall, silent, unmoved. Inside, Cade's hands rested calmly on the interface. His thoughts controlled the movement. Every sensor fed him data. His heartbeat stayed steady. They were coming from 3 sides now, fast ground units on the left, heavy walkers from the right, airships descending from above. The Titan didn't flinch. It moved. The first blow was like a mountain falling. The Titan slammed its fist into the earth, creating a shockwave that flipped enemy scouts like toys. Then it turned toward the walkers and charged. Its footfalls cracked the ground. One punch to the lead walker shattered its armored chest. Another spin sent debris flying in all directions. Above, the airships launched missiles. Cade activated the Titan's shoulder plates. A shield barrier unfolded in the air. The missiles hit it, lighting up the sky, but the barrier held. Smoke filled the valley. Fire climbed the hills. Still, the Titan stood. In the distance, the Elara watched in stunned silence. Even the youngest, Children who had once drawn shaky stick figures now stared with open mouths. Their drawings had become real, but this was more than they had imagined. It was power given shape. Hope given armor. Elara gripped the edge of a stone and whispered, "He's holding back the entire army." One of the elders nodded slowly. "He is one man, but he is not alone." And he wasn't. Cade's signal had awakened more than just machines. From hidden caches across Elara 7, old drones rose from their dirt-covered tombs. Defense satellites blinked awake in orbit, and one by one lost signals answered his call. The battlefield shifted. Cade launched a drone wing that blanketed the ridge in blue light. It jammed Zarneth communications. Their units began to fall out of sync. Walkers collided. Scouts lost control. Airships began to pull back, confused. Cade pushed forward. The Titan moved through the chaos, slow and unstoppable. Where plasma struck, armor held. Where missiles landed, shields blocked. And when enemies got close, they were swept away like dust. But the Zarneth had one more card. A super-heavy unit dropped from orbit, taller than any walker before it, covered in black armor and glowing with red lines. It landed with a massive quake shaking the valley. The earth cracked under its weight. The Elara gasped. "What is that?" Someone whispered. Cade saw it too. His visor displayed it with a warning. Zarneth class, World Piercer risk level, extreme armor, plasma resistant, weak points, unknown. It raised its weapon, something between a cannon and a drill, and pointed. It at the Titan. Cade didn't move. He scanned quickly. Too large to dodge, too strong to take head on. He needed a plan. The piercer fired. The beam struck the Titan in the side, and for the first time Cade was thrown back. Inside the cave, panic broke out. The Elara screamed. "No!" Elara shouted, standing up. "Get up! You have to get up!" Dust filled the air. The Titan's left side smoked. Sparks flew from its joints. Cade breathed slowly, checking damage. Damage, 47%. Shields compromised. Weapons active, pilot status stable. He looked out through the cracked shield glass, then he whispered 2 words. Round 2. The battlefield had changed. Smoke covered the hills like a thick blanket. The air shimmered from heat. Red warning lights blinked across Cade's visor as the Titan took a knee, systems adjusting. Sparks danced across his left side where the World Piercer's first shot had hit. The mountain ridge shook again as the Piercer stepped forward, its massive limbs crashing into the earth with each move. Inside the Titan, Cade stared at the towering enemy. It was bigger, stronger, and freshly dropped from orbit, but it wasn't. Older. And it didn't remember this land like he did. He rerouted energy to the Titan's damaged leg. Auxiliary power from deep within the machine hummed to life. The reactor warmed. The system responded. "Let's finish what we started," Cade said quietly. The Titan rose back to its full height. Across the valley, the Elara held their breath. Elara watched with tears in her eyes. All around her, children held their drawings. Close to their chests like prayers, she whispered, "Don't fall." The piercer fired again. This time, Cade moved. He jumped aside with the Titan's full weight, and the beam missed by meters, exploding into the canyon wall. Rock and dust flew into the air. The shockwave knocked down trees and scattered what was left of broken drones. Cade didn't stop. He charged. The Titan picked up speed. Its massive legs pounded across the cracked ground. He activated the shoulder boosters and leapt, yes, leapt, across the field. The piercer tried to swing, but it was too late. The Titan slammed into it with full force, knocking both giants into the cliffside. The ground shook. A deep echo rumbled like thunder rolling through the bones of the planet. Stone cracked. Clouds of dust spiraled into the sky. Cade didn't give it time to recover. He activated the Titan's left arm drill, something buried and forgotten in its old schematics. A powerful close-range weapon. He jammed it into the piercer's chest, grinding metal against metal. The enemy screamed in digital rage. Sparks flew everywhere. The piercer struck back with a heavy fist, hitting the Titan's head. The cockpit shuddered. Cade's helmet cracked slightly. Blood touched his lower lip. Still, he pressed on. The drill core spun faster. One final blow, and the piercer's chest exploded in a burst of fire and light. The entire valley seemed to pause. The enemy machine groaned, systems failing. Its legs buckled. It fell backward with a heavy crash, crushing a ridge of black stone as it collapsed. Silence, then wind, then cheers. From the cliffs, the Elara people cried out. They jumped, they hugged. Children ran toward the edge, shouting the name they had given him even though they never knew it. The legend, the one who came. Elara fell to her knees. She didn't cry. She just smiled and placed her chalk into the dust. He did it. Inside the Titan, Cade let out a slow breath. He leaned back in the seat, armor releasing tension. His fingers were sore. His jaw ached. But he was still alive. And more importantly, so were they. He looked at the view from the Titan's cracked visor. The battlefield was quiet now. Only the sound of wind and small fires remained. But there was one more signal flashing in his interface. It was old, and it was coming from deep beneath the valley floor. Unknown. Elara archive detected location. Below ancient temple ruins. Status. Sealed 200 years message. To the one who kept the promise. Cade narrowed his eyes. The war wasn't the end. Something had been waiting here, just like him. Dust settled slowly across the battlefield. The wreckage of the world piercer still smoldered, its cracked body sending faint blue smoke into the breeze. Elara families left their shelters for the first time in days. The children who once drew legends on stone now walked across a real battlefield their hands had summoned. They looked not with fear, but with quiet pride. Elara stood among them, watching the Titan kneel down beside the broken ridge. Its head lowered, smoke trailing from one side. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. They all knew what he had done for them. Inside the cockpit, Cade sat motionless. He wasn't looking at the damage reports anymore. His eyes were fixed on the soft blinking signal in the corner of his visor, a code that had activated just after the piercer fell. It wasn't enemy tech. It wasn't a trap. It was Elara, and it had waited 200 years. Cade stepped out of the Titan slowly. The ground felt strange beneath his boots, as if the world had changed its shape during the battle. Maybe it had. He walked toward the signal origin, past broken walls, past a crumbled archway carved with the names of fallen Elara leaders, past the graves of warriors he once fought beside. The signal led him to the remains of an old temple. He remembered this place. Once, it had been the heart of Elara wisdom, a quiet space of stone pillars and wind-hollowed chambers. But now it was mostly rubble, half swallowed by time. Still, the signal was strong. He placed his palm on a cracked wall. The stone shimmered. A panel slid open. Beneath it, a stairway descended into the dark. The air grew cold as he moved down. Lights flickered as he passed, tiny blue orbs in the stone coming alive for the first time in generations. At the bottom was a sealed door with markings he hadn't seen since the early Alliance, carvings that mixed Elara art and human writing. He placed his hand on the symbol. The door opened. Inside was a chamber no one else had seen in centuries. At the center was a small pedestal. Floating above it was a crystal cube, Elara memory tech, old, fragile, but still alive. He picked it up. It glowed at his touch. A voice filled the room, soft, ancient, familiar. Cade Lauren. If you are hearing this, then you kept your promise. You returned. It was the voice of High Elder Venra, one of the first Elara who had trusted him long ago. The Elder's voice was weak, but steady. We knew we may not live to see your return. We knew the war might erase everything. But we left this message not to guide you, only to thank you, because even if the stars forget us, we knew one would remember. One would return, the one the children never stopped drawing. Cade stared at the cube, his hands steady. The voice continued. Elara 7 does not need a king. It does not need a god, it needs a man who stands when no one else will. You are that man, and if our people survive today, it is because you reminded them who they were. The light faded. The room went quiet. Cade stood still for a long time. Then he walked back up. Outside, the sky was clearing. The smoke had drifted away, replaced by golden light breaking through soft clouds. The Elara gathered near the Titan, waiting. When Cade appeared, the crowd moved aside. Alia stepped forward, looking up at him. Was something there? He nodded. A message from the past. What did it say? Cade looked at the children holding their chalk, the elders standing proud, the broken world slowly starting to breathe again. It said this was never about the war, he said. It was about remembering who we are. The sun rose slowly over the broken valley. Ash drifted in the wind like falling snow, but there was no fear now. Only silence. Only breath. Only the quiet sound of life returning. The Elara people had no words for what had happened. Some wept. Some stood in complete stillness. The battlefield was scattered with pieces of enemy machines glowing dim red from the last pulses of Zarnath tech. But the threat was gone. What remained was memory. The Titan stood beside the old ridge like a monument, motionless, quiet. Its eyes no longer glowed. Its systems powered down slowly as Cade stepped away for the last time. He walked among the Elara, not above them, not ahead, just beside. Children followed him with wide eyes. Some carried drawings. Others had begun sketching new ones on the broken walls of the nearby stone. Alia came up beside him, holding a folded piece of fabric. A drawing. She opened it. It was him, the armor, the glowing hand, the tall figure standing not in battle but in peace, watching children draw on the dirt. She handed it to him. This is the last one I'll make. Cade looked at it quietly, then back at her. Why? Because we don't need to imagine you anymore, she said. You came. He smiled slightly. Then make a new one, not of me, of yourselves, because the future belongs to you now. The Elara elders stepped forward. One placed a hand over his chest. We have no crown to give you, no medal, only the truth. You were the story we told to keep our children brave, but now you are the reason they will live to write their own. Cade nodded. He didn't stay for celebration. He never liked attention. He was a soldier, not a leader. He returned to the Titan one last time, not to pilot it, but to place something inside. He placed the drawing from Elara in the cockpit, then he sealed it. He activated its long-term hibernation mode and stepped back. The Titan's lights slowly dimmed. Its armor plates folded in, locking tight. The machine returned to stillness, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. Across the next few days, the Elara buried their dead and rebuilt. Old tunnels were reopened. Crops were replanted. Water paths reconnected. And in the middle of their village square, they carved a new monument, not of Cade in armor, not of the Titan, but of children. Drawing. At the bottom of the stone was written, in both Elara script and human language, we believed, he came, we remember, we stand. Cade didn't return to the stars. He stayed. Not as a warrior, but as a witness. He helped build houses. He taught the young. He showed them how to defend, not to destroy. And when visitors from other worlds finally came again, they found something strange. An alien village guarded by stories, led by a quiet man in old armor, and children who never forgot the power of memory. One day, many years later, an Elara girl found a new drawing on the ground. It was not made by chalk. It was carved into stone, a tall figure, no helmet, a soft smile. Children by his side. The girl turned to her mother. Who made this one? Her mother smiled and said, maybe he did. And somewhere, under the shade of a tree, the human who had once come from the stars sat in silence, watching a new generation draw, this time not in fear, but in peace.